Hello, welcome to the presentation on flow and pull systems in the office environment. You might think that the management principles are mainly for factories or manufacturing, but the truth is that offices are also full of processes, from document approval to customer communication to project management. And it is these processes that often suffer from unnecessary delays, chaos, or employee overload. The goal of this lesson is to show how the principles of flow, the smooth flow of work, and the pull system, work based on real capacity, can improve the efficiency of office teams. We'll look at how recognize bottlenecks, how to implement the just-in-time principle in the office operation, and what specific tools such as Kanban or VIP limit can help reduce stress and increase productivity. Lean principles are not just for assembly lines. They can also significantly simplify everyday office work. To know where today's presentation is headed, let's clarify its main goals. The first goal is to explain what workflow actually means in the office. That is, the sequence of activities, steps, and interactions that lead to the completion of a task. The second goal is to learn to recognize bottlenecks. These are moments where work piles up and the entire process slows down, typically waiting for approval of overly complex forms or unclear responsibilities. The third goal is to understand the difference between a push and a pull system. In a push system, tasks are pushed onto people, regardless of their capacity. In a pull system, the team pulls work based on what they are able to handle. The fourth goal is to show how the just-in-time principle can be used in the office. Work exactly when it's needed and not earlier or later. And the fifth goal is to introduce practical methods and tools that can help, from Kanban boards to VIP limits to techniques like time blocking. At the end of the lesson, you should be able to not only understand the theory, but also practically implement the principles of flow and pull it into your own office work. When we talk about flow, we mean a smooth and uninterrupted flow of work in the office. This means that individuals' steps follow each other, tasks do not get stuck, and the entire process progresses smoothly from start to finish. For example, consider the invoicing process. If an invoice first waits to be filled out, then reviewed, then approved, and finally sent, and sits for days at each step, then the flow is definitely not working. A good flow means that the invoice moves through the process quickly and without unnecessary waiting. Flow in the office brings several benefits. The first one is less confusion and stress, because everyone knows what they are working on and what will come next. Next one is higher predictability. Processes have a clear structure and are better controllable. Last one is a better quality, because tasks are not pushed to the last minute, but move much more smoothly. To achieve such flow, we first need to map out processes, perhaps using simple diagrams, and then these show where work is unnecessarily piling up and where the improvements can be made. Flow means that the work goes from A to point B without obstacles, quickly, clearly, and efficiently. Office processes often have bottlenecks that slow down or completely stop the flow of work. One of the most common problems is slow document approval. An invoice, contract, or order sometimes waits for days or even weeks just because the person responsible does not have time. Another typical bottleneck is a duplicate paperwork or inefficient forms. If an employee has to fill in the same data multiple times into different systems, it not only takes time, but also increases the risk of errors. Unclear roles and responsibilities are also a common problem. When it is not clear who is supposed to take on a task, work stops because no one feels responsible, and there can be chaos. And last but not least, there is insufficient communication. For example, where teams only transfer tasks via email and there is no overview of who is working on what, to identify bottlenecks such as process mapping, mapping the entire process step by step, or swim lane diagrams, which clearly show who is responsible for what. Once we see these bottlenecks, we can start looking for ways to eliminate them. thereby speeding up making the entire process more efficient. One of the key principles of Lean is the difference between a push and a pull system, and it can be applied perfectly in offices. In push system, tasks are pushed onto employees regardless of their capacity. The manager assigns work according to a priority list, but this often results in people having more tasks on their desk than they can actually handle. The result is overload, stress, and large backlog. In contrast, a pull system works by having employees pull work themselves, but only when they have free capacity. Tasks are added to the process gradually, which ensures a smoother workflow and less chaos. In practice, the pull system is often visualized using a Kanban board, a simple board divided into columns labeled to do, doing, and done. Tasks are moved from column to column, and each team has a clear overview of what is currently being done. The benefits of the pull systems are clear: less stress, less risk of errors, and higher quality of work, because employees focus on fewer tasks but with great attention. The push system creates overload, while the pull system brings order and fluidity. This is why modern offices are increasingly switching to the pull principle. Another principle that can be applied brilliantly in an office environment is the just-in-time. It originally originated in the automotive industry, particularly in Toyota, where it meant that the parts and materials were delivered to the line exactly they were needed, no sooner nor later. This minimized inventory and made the process smoother. It works similar in the office. Just-in-time means that when the process task and information is actually needed, not before. This reduces the risk of unnecessary work, duplication, and confusion. For example, if we prepare a report too early, it is possible that the data will no longer be up to date by the time it is published, and we will have to redo it. However, if we create it exactly when it is needed, there is no risk of rework. Another example is emails. We have an inbox constantly open and respond immediately. We create a stockpile of unfinished tasks and have a hard time keeping track. Just in time in emails means processing them at designated times, and only when we really have the capacity for them. Just in time in the office means less inventory, less rework, and more flexibility. It is a way to focus on what's truly valuable at the moment when it's truly needed. Now let's look at how the just-in-time principle works in everyday office practice. The first area is email. Instead of constantly checking your inbox, it's more efficient to process your email only in designated intervals, say 2 or 3 times a day. This keeps your email from becoming a never-ending pile of unfinished work. Another example is projects. In the traditional approach, a team is given a lot of tasks at once, which pile up, and in the just-in-time approach, new tasks are added only when the team completes the previous ones. This leads to better focus and less stress and a much more clearer environment. Just-in-time works similarly in customer service. If the team has a ticketing system, individual workers only take on new requests after the previous one has been resolved. The result is faster response times and fewer errors. Just-in-time can also be brought to the office through time blocking, scheduling time on a calendar. We set aside blocks for specific tasks and avoid work piling up or jumping from one thing to another. In summary, just-in-time in the office means working only on what has a value right now, thereby avoiding overwork, chaos, and unnecessary inventories of unfinished work. One of the most common problems in offices is employee overload. There are more tasks than capacity, and the result is stress, mistakes, and burnout. The Lean approach offers several strategies to prevent this. The first is the VIP limit, i.e., the limit on the number of active tasks or work in progress. A team or individuals set a maximum, for example, of 2 tasks, and new ones are not added until they are finished. This prevents chaos and increases the quality of work. The second strategy is to focus on one task and eliminate multitasking. Multitasking seems efficient, but in reality, it only slows down and increases the risk of errors. It is better to complete one task before starting the next. The third tool is Inbox Zero, which is a controlled email processing. Instead of letting emails clutter our day, we set aside a specific time to deal with them and keep our inbox empty. The fourth strategy is effective meetings, less frequent, shorter, and with clear goal. Much of the office congestion stems from endless meetings and the time that take away from real work. These methods can reduce pressure on employees and increase the quality of results and maintain a healthier work environment. Overwork is not a sign of productivity, but rather a waste of human potential. To show how these principles work in practice, let's look at the example of the Crescent services. The company had a problem with employee overload. Tasks pile up, it was not clear who was solving what, and the result was delays and frequent errors. A typical push system. Work was pushed on the people regardless of their capacity. The solution was to implement a few simple lean tools. The company set a work in progress limit. Each employee could have maximum of 2 tasks in progress at any time. They were not given new ones until they had completed them. At the same time, they introduced a standardized application process. Customers and colleagues used a single form, eliminating ambiguities and missing information. And finally, the team started using a Kanban board, where all tasks were visible. Thanks to this, everyone had a clear overview of what was being done and what the status was. The result? Less backlogs, faster response times, and significantly fewer errors. Employees felt less overwhelmed, and customers received services faster and more reliably. This example shows that even relatively small changes, a clear process, VIP limit, work visualization, can dramatically increase the efficiency of an office team. Today, we showed how lean management principles can be used in an office environment, where cars or machines are not produced, but there are still many processes that can be inefficient. We talked about what flow means, a smooth flow of work that ensures that tasks are not left behind and that the entire process runs smoothly. We looked at the difference between push and pull system. While push leads to overload and chaos, pull allows you to adjust the work to the real capacity of the team. We demonstrated that the just-in-time principle and its application in the office, less work, inventory, less rework, and more flexibility. We also mentioned specific strategies against overload, such as VIP limits, single task focus, inbox zero, or effective meetings. And finally, we went through the example of Crescent services, where the introduction of these methods leads to faster work, fewer errors, and happier employees and customers. The message is simple. Lean principles are not just for factories. They can also help us eliminate waste, reduce stress, and increase the quality of work in the office. If we learn to think in terms of flow, pull, and just in time, we can turn everyday office processes into an environment that is more efficient, clearer, and more enjoyable for everyone.